Welcome to today's webinar brought to you by Couchbase, Dataiku, and CData. I'm Stephen Fig, Director of Database Trends and Applications and Unisphere Research. I will be your host for today's broadcast. Our presentation today is titled Modernizing Your Data and Analytics in the Cloud. Before we begin, I want to explain how you can be a part of this broadcast. There will be a question and answer session. If you have a question during the presentation, just type it into the question box provided and click on the submit button. We're going to try to get to as many questions as possible later. Now, to introduce our speakers for today, we're very excited to have with us Jeff Morris, Vice President of Product and Solutions Marketing at Couchbase, Catalina Herrera, Field CDO at Dataiku, and Jared Johnson, Senior Technology Evangelist at CData. Each speaker today is going to give a quick presentation, and then we're going to dive into a group discussion on pressing issues. So, without further ado, I'm going to pass the event over to Jeff to get us started. Welcome to the broadcast, Jeff.
Thanks so much, Stephen. It's great to be here, and welcome everybody. Just to familiarize everyone with regard to who the heck we are, you use Couchbase every single day across a variety of different applications that are hosted in the cloud or that are, happen to be online. Anytime that you're scrolling through your LinkedIn feed, all the common feeds that and activities that you'll see in LinkedIn, those are all cached inside of Couchbase. If you walk into a Louis Vuitton store and they want to show you their entire global inventory, they would do that over a tablet, and that tablet would be running Couchbase Lite and showing that inventory worldwide. And then, of course, they'd go through their selling ceremony about what it's like to own merchandise from Louis Vuitton and how quickly they can get it to you. But other kind of use cases are quite interesting. Whenever you see your Frito-Lay delivery truck dropping off Tostitos at your local grocery store, that whole inventory on board the truck is being managed by a Couchbase-driven system. And to 40,000 different trucks and drivers and routes. If you're streaming services, things like Peacock or Sky or Hulu in this case, those are all Couchbase customers that are keeping track of what you're watching and making sure you pick up where you left off. EA Sports is the leaderboard is managed by Couchbase. Whenever you get a fraud warning on your phone, FICO, the Falcon platform, is usually the system that is warning you about that. It serves 9,000 banks and covers about 2/3 of the world's credit cards. That too is ended up being managed by a Couchbase back end. So, like I said, you end up seeing us a lot. And the commonality of all of these different customers, and these are just 8 of them, is that we're managing account profiles on behalf of within their application and usually matching it to a big catalog of stuff. Whether it's the Louis Vuitton products or the Fritos, etc., and doing that in a way such that we can serve massive numbers of these account profiles. In fact, just these 8 customers here, they represent 7.5 billion account profiles being managed in a Couchbase system. Remember, there's only 8 billion people on the planet, and this is just 8 customers of mine. And I'm not mentioning significant other ones like Amadeus and Sabre and whatnot for handling all of your travel bookings, for example. So the common things that you see in a Couchbase environment are things like high-speed caching, right? And it being operating as a cache that comes from our background from Memcached. And Memcached, of course, was one of the first open source key value in-memory key value databases. Well, they met up with the people at Couch One, curators of CouchDB, and that was sort of the peanut butter and chocolate moment for the industry, is when a JSON data store got together with an in-memory key value store, and that became us. And we've grown for 15 years since then, of course, adding a number of different capabilities to the environment, whether that's full text search, geographic search, vector search now, and we also created a mobile, a mobile environment to synchronize to, and then when we appeal to a lot of developer kinds of capabilities like supporting SQL. But more recently, I think, and more interesting for our topic today, is we've introduced a new series of capabilities in the cloud to address a need that really hasn't been fixed in the 25 years that I've been operating in both the analytic and application world. And that's that JSON is a really difficult data format to analyze because it's kind of messy, right? It's semi-structured. It can change dynamically all the time. And oftentimes it's very difficult to get into an organizational structure like you're familiar with in an analytic universe. And that JSON problem is not just something that we deal with at Couchbase. It's something that everybody deals with, whether they have DocumentDB or MongoDB or other applications that are using JSON structures, because they really like developers really like the flexibility of JSON. And yet, so flexibility of JSON is going to end up assisting us quite a bit if we can turn that into an analytic format and get it so that it can participate in the larger scale analytics that Dataiku or my partner CData can handle. So one of the cool things about JSON is it's super flexible. You can add attributes to one document or many, and I say typically the developer can control that as to what goes in. But it's also interesting because it can carry other payloads along inside the document that you might not think of, like metadata about when the user might have last logged in, or in our case now, calculated metrics from analytics that can be used within the application, or downstream within AI activities in the application. So really, really flexible there. And that's one of the fun things that that we sort of bring to the table. And as we look forward into what's going to happen in the cloud and what's going to happen with analytics and what's going to happen with AI, we see JSON as being a big vehicle inside of operating with that. It's a great format for storing prompt variables, right? If you're programmatically creating a prompt conversation with a large language model, perhaps interrogating it for, can you take this spreadsheet and analyze it for me? It could remember that conversation, and that could be stored in JSON. The validation of full prompt conversations, whether the AI gave you a truthful answer or a crazy one, right? The likelihood that you get good information out of AI is correlated or mapped to the quality of the data that you're putting into it. So that's going to be really important even as we look ahead on both the operational and analytics side of the environments. One of the really clever, interesting things too is that start thinking about what you can do if you can get metrics out to your mobile devices, and then have local conversations on device with small language models, and be doing things like, tell me how much you would expect, let's say, this concert ticket to drop because it's 2 minutes before showtime, and clearly the event is undersold. So I want to get in for as little money as possible. You can see that I like going to concerts. That could be actually an AI interrogation or conversation you could have with an analytic calculation built in that says, the estimate is going to be, you'll pay $35 for a $150 show. Those are the kinds of capabilities that you can end up bringing into the environment if you're using JSON-based capabilities and incorporating some of the new vector search and Gen AI functionality inside both analytic exercises and inside of operational applications. My only little plug is I've got a free tier that you can sign up with, and it's brand new. It's got our analytic services built into it as well as the operational ones. So certainly check it out if you're interested. Now, happy to pass this over to Catalina from Dataiku. So Catalina, I'll give you the floor.
Thank you, Jeff. Hello, everyone. And my name is Catalina Herrera. I am the field CDO at Dataiku, and I have a few minutes to explain what Dataiku is. And we like to call it the Universal AI Platform, but I think what that means, and I like to start with this picture because I think that one picture says more than 1,000 words sometimes. Recognized leader and visionary in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for Innovation and Excellence. But I will say that what that means, and what that means when we are thinking about AI or any data outcome, or how we actually ensure that this is successful, what makes visionary Dataiku, and what that means for this kind of applications. And with that, I would like to highlight the fact that there are multiple variables that we have to consider when we are trying to maximize the opportunity of what data can do for the enterprise. And that goes from analytics, from the descriptive side of it, predictive side of it, or right now, Gen AI or the AI agents that we have going on in the field. But what makes us visionary is that we actually consider this as a multivariable problem where we identify the main key pillars that actually make this successful in an enterprise deployment. And what we are seeing right now is that you have the option to make it very successful, but it's also very risky. And that is why I think Dataiku brings to the table that sweet spot as a universal platform. So if we think about the components that are behind the scenes for any AI project to be successful, any data outcome to be successful, we have a very diverse group of people that is actually interrogating that data in one way or another, that has a very diverse set of skills and comes from different backgrounds and different domain expertise. We have more and more data, as Jeff was mentioning it, and yes, it's a structure and semi-structure and non-structure and everything else in between. And if we think about the last 30 years, we continue to digitalize our processes, and now more than ever, we have data coming from every single potential silo that you can imagine out there in a very diverse infrastructure. So from the technology perspective, we have 30 years of advancements in terms of the hardware where the software is running. So if you think about how much money you paid for your first USB and what was the capacity, how much money you paid for your last USB, and what is the capacity, you see that exponential growth in terms of compute and everything that we can do in terms of the data sources and where we are storing this data and where is this data coming from in terms of a very diverse infrastructure. We're going to focus today on cloud, but we have hybrid systems, we still have on-prem and everything in between. And then you have to keep in mind a fourth pillar, which is that overseeing what's going on here holistically, as multiple teams are trying to maximize the insights that they can get out of this data. So it has to be governed somehow. It has to be part of a framework where these teams can actually collaborate and can tech communicate. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. But at the end, you want to ensure that you have the proper guardrails that need to be in place for these projects to be as successful as they can be. And that is the governance part of it. So Dataiku is actually helping this enterprise to turn all of these potential risk variables into an opportunity. And the opportunity comes where you can actually smooth out the framework that is going to properly connect a very diverse group of people that comes with different skill sets. And we have the developers that like a specific programming language, like a Python or an R, SQL, or everything in between. But you also have the personas that come from a business intelligence background and perhaps a dashboarding background and are used to interrogate this data in a slightly different way. And we need to ensure that these groups of people can actually collaborate towards the same goal, because that is when ROAI happens. That is where you can actually prove that your data outcome is actually moving a needle and you are generating value. So you need to holistically think about this as a framework that is going to allow these very diverse teams to consume this data that is not stopping anytime soon. The opposite. We will have more and more and more data coming from at different types and ways to go, especially right now with generative AI. We have the rise of the unstructured data being in high demand to train all of these retrieval augmented generation projects and so on. And then you have a technology that is going to continue to change, and you have to be as agnostic as possible to that never-ending change. So your teams don't need to start from zero every time that you move to a different cloud or bring a different component as part of that ecosystem. And then once again, how you close the entire framework goes with that guardrails and governance that are part of the how we ensure that we are empowering our people in the best possible way. And at the same time, we are democratizing not only the data, but also AI. How you democratize AI. And that is what Dataiku brings to the table. So we have been doing this for over a decade now. We have over 800 customers around the world. And when we say get your return on AI, it means that we focus on generating value for the enterprise and for all of these teams and for different use cases that we have. Everybody has a question to ask to their data, and it has to be regardless of all the variables that we have out there. We have a workforce that is demanding that empowerment. Let's be empowered by technology and let's make the most out of that technology that is available today, but let's do it in a very, very smart way. So I am looking forward to this conversation. I'm going to pass it to Jared. Jared, room is all yours.
All right, thank you very much. Excellent presentation so far. I always learn something whenever I participate in these, so I'm excited to continue to do so. My name is Jared Johnson. I'm a senior technology evangelist at CData, and we are the data connectivity company. In short, we're going to make it easier for every user in a business to get access to the right data at the right time in the right place. So in the short amount of time that I have with you this afternoon, this morning, or this evening, depending on when and where you're joining us from, I'm going to talk about who CData is. I'm going to give some examples of customers that have modernized their data and analytics on the cloud. And then we'll talk about the volume of data that occurs because of modernization and cloud adoption and how CData helps with that as well. For anybody that isn't familiar, CData Software is a leading provider in data connectivity solutions. We provide real-time access to data no matter where it is, whether that's in a legacy system on premises or a cloud-based system. It could be anything from a QuickBooks desktop installation to Amazon S3 repository, a flat file repository sitting in the cloud. We're partners with Couchbase, so we provide connectivity into and out of Couchbase. So we have over 400 employees globally, 7,000 plus active users and customers, and that is due in no small part to our OEM partners. These are companies that are trusting us to fuel the connectivity for their data applications. So they would rather focus on building the best data application that they can, and they rely on CData to provide the connectivity between their app and the data that their users are using. So how are CData customers modernizing? What does that look like? So I've got 5 logos of 7,000 plus here, but the story is largely the same. People need access to data, or they need to put data in the right place in order to make the most out of it, to get the best analytics, to build those charts and reports and graphs that everybody loves to see, to really find value from their data, and not just find value from it, but get actionable insights to be able to actually drive business and understand the truth about their organization. So all of that to say, our customers are getting data from where it sits to where it needs to be. Our first example comes from Manhattan Associates. They are migrating the disparate data that they have in their Salesforce ecosystem and their Jira ecosystem into a Snowflake data warehouse for that comprehensive 360-degree view that everybody talks about so much. We have organizations that are using us for that modernization process. The American Red Cross had just tons of data in on-premises Teradata systems. They needed to migrate it to Amazon Redshift so that they could incorporate it within all of their Amazon initiatives and all of the tools and apps that are available in the Amazon ecosystem. And so we helped with that. They partnered with us to move that data efficiently and quickly and in a way that made sense. We help customers deploy data fabrics, data mesh, and governance strategies. So we have CData Virtuality, which is a complete data strategy platform. It acts as a mesh or a fabric. It incorporates both live access and replicated data in order to provide that complete picture, that complete strategy around data access, data management, data governance. And so they're able to do all of that and adopted CData Virtuality to create that single data hub that's not just usable by IT, but also usable by line of business users. So they get real self-service access for every user in their organization. Scorpion was able to scale their IT infrastructure as their own business grew. So their FP&A team replaced a highly manual process of extracting and consolidating data from disparate sources, all of their different systems, and getting it into that data warehouse. Exhausting, time-consuming, expensive, just because of the person hours involved. Manual replication processes were quickly replaced, and so again, there's the trend of moving data, getting data from older systems or legacy systems or on-prem systems into the cloud. And then we have BJ's Wholesale Club, a customer of ours. The short story is that they were able to get improved analytics to grow employee retention by 10%. So they were having trouble accessing their Workday data. They needed to get access to it in Tableau across the entire organization. And so they were able to use CData to do that, just adopting CData as the pipe to sit between the tool that they wanted to work with their data in, Tableau Cloud, and then the place where their data was sitting, two platforms that they had adopted as part of their modernization strategy that didn't talk to each other natively. And that's where CData came in and was able to fill that gap. So they could continue to work with both systems that they had adopted for all of the reasons that they had adopted them without any hiccups or without any extra work on their part. So we've talked about connecting to data, but what does it look like? What does that data mean? How much is it? Well, there's a lot. So modern data and analytics, it means a lot of data. And, there are numbers that get published, it feels like every day. So I'm not going to throw any of those out there. It'll be, petabytes or petabytes per day or whatever statistic gets thrown out. But with CData, you're going to get easier management of all of that data. So no matter which big data store you adopt, which big data store your organization is looking to use, we're going to have connectivity for that. We're cloud friendly. So as you're looking at modernizing, we have cloud platforms available that meet your needs where you need them. And it's not just the cloud, but we also support those legacy systems. So as I talked about before, if you have legacy on-premises data, if you have legacy systems in other data ecosystems, other cloud platforms that you need to migrate from one to the other, we're going to be able to support you there. And, talking about it is all well and good, but here are some actual numbers that showcase the large amount of data that customers are using that we're seeing. So, in the past 12 months, when people are pulling data from Oracle and SAP through CData's tools, we've seen 879 billion rows of data in the past year. 839 billion rows of data have been replicated into Snowflake data warehouses through our tools. 899 million rows of data are being replicated every month into Databricks. So just vast volumes of data. As people move to the cloud, it makes it a lot easier to have a lot of data, which is great because now you have these large data sets that you can rely on for your AI initiatives, large data sets that you can slice and dice and analyze in order to find those deeper insights to really figure out what's going on with your organization to try to drive that business forward. And then two more numbers for you. So 1 billion rows per month for of data that are being replicated into Google BigQuery in the past year, and then 865 million rows per month have been replicated into Amazon Redshift. So again, no matter where you are working with your data, no matter how much data there is, you need a way to get it from where it is to where you want it to be, from those cloud applications, those cloud services, cloud data stores, and into the cloud data warehouses that you need. So with that, I will say thank you for allowing me to present, and I will turn things back over to Stephen to get us kicked off for the Q&A.
Thank you, Jeff, Catalina, and Jared for those great presentations. So we're going to dive into our group discussion for today. I like this first question to lead off with. Well, I wrote it, but I do like it, and I'm curious how you are going to respond to this question. Jeff, we're going to let you be our leadoff hitter for this. The question is, based on your observations, what is the top challenge organizations are facing in deploying and managing data and analytics in the cloud?
I typically say the top challenge is picking what you want to move, you want to start working with first. And what we've seen is that when you're starting out, it makes sense to be operating against something that is already in the cloud along with you. So something perhaps that's easy to get into an AWS environment or get into a GCP kind of environment. So typically you see like your CRM system, a Salesforce system, as the first data source that someone wants to start with, because it's highly active data and you have a lot of interested parties wanting to get information out of that. And of course, we've all used Salesforce, and as you operate within it, you start to outthink its own reporting capabilities, and you want to start doing things on your own. So there might be that, and then you might go to your support system like Zendesk and start to incorporate systems like that. So you'd use even if you're using a local in the cloud BI tool that's, let's say, in AWS, QuickSight or something like that, you can use tools like Jared's, right, in CData, to grab data from all from those sources to begin with, and then and then start to move on. But I think back to the original is it's just saying yes to it is arguably the biggest challenge, mm-hmm. and then based on what your particular needs are, just build from there. I think one of the earliest things we noticed was analytic workloads typically are the first things that do move into the cloud from an enterprise if they haven't done so already, if they're only beginning. And usually it's because that's not, it's data that is not operationally sensitive so much, and oftentimes is retroactive in perspective, right? It's you're looking backwards on things, and you're not running a critical operation system that you can't move. So anyway, that's sort of my thought on it. Pass to either one of my peers here.
Thank you, Jeff. No, appreciate it. Those are some great points, Catalina. I'm curious if you agree with Jeff, if you have something else you view as the top challenge. Based on your observations, where do you stand on this question?
I do agree with Jeff, but I also want to zoom out a bit and bring back the holistic perspective. I will say that the balance between make it scalable and cost efficient, it has to be part of the equation. And that means we are dealing with diverse data sources, and we need to ensure some quality of data there. But at the same time, how are we going to empower a cross-functional collaboration team? Like, it has to be a framework. This is not an easy problem to fix. And at the end, you see teams trying to stitch up different components of that cloud ecosystem. So knowing that your ultimate goal is to ensure that these teams can keep scaling, keep learning from each other, and that is going to be a cross-functional collaboration component that has to be part of that design when thinking about it. And then you are going to be managing these costs that at the end are going to target your value. So ROI. Right? And how are we going to ensure that this is connected with value? So it's not an easy problem to fix, but keeping the end goal in mind helps when thinking about the design.
Understood. So you have to think ahead of yourselves, think strategically, not just tactically, like, oh, this will work for this one thing, because it's going to be part of something bigger. That makes a lot of sense. Jared, curious where you stand on this, if there's anything you'd like to add, what your perspective is.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I'll follow Jeff. You got to say yes, right? Do it. I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is making the hurdle of adopting the cloud, especially if you're in an older organization or a legacy organization. Just a tangent slightly, we work with a lot of higher ed customers, and the friction to modernize is high there. So first step is to say yes. Catalina, I think you nailed the second step, and you kind of stole my answer that I was going to go for. Is developing that strategy that's going to be cross-functional, that you're not isolating one team and one team goes to the cloud, and then everyone else is left behind, and then you get these silos of strategy that you would then have to merge together. We see that a lot, and I'm sure both of you, or all three of you, do as well. So I'm gonna take a step, I think, diagonally down from the strategy into the strategy a little bit. And one of the biggest things that we see is and problems that I talk with customers about is just understanding where their data is. Having a catalog to throw the buzzword out, but really a more ephemeral idea of just knowing, okay, so I have some CRM data here, but is that all my CRM data? I have some accounting data here, but is that all of my accounting data? I have, employee data here, but is that all of it? Is this all of my financial data? Understanding that and making sure that knowing where all of your data is as you take this modernization journey, I think is going to be critical in, developing that strategy for modernizing.
Fantastic. That's another great point, Jared. And since your answer was stolen last time, I'm going to let you go first. Just kidding, of course. Next question. How can companies increase the time to value of analytics projects?
Oh, yeah. So you are going to let me go first.
Letting you go first.
Yeah. So I think one of the things, and this keys off of a little bit of what Catalina was saying, is that you need to let the parts of your organization specialize in what they specialize in, and then also understand maybe where your organization is weak, where you need to rely on a third-party partner. So if you have people that are really good at building charts and reports and dashboards, you should let them do that and figure out how to make that happen. If your organization loves Tableau or Power BI or Excel or Looker or QuickSight, whatever tool they have, part of your strategy should be letting them use that tool. If you have people that are, really good at managing databases or setting up databases, you should let them do that. But if you, aren't versed in building a database or hosting or managing a database, then, look to, partners like Couchbase that will house your data in the cloud and let you store it in a flexible way. If you're not an expert in AI, then go to the experts in AI. And then I'll toot CData's horn a little bit. If you're not an expert in connectivity, if you don't have a strong IT team that's able to build integrations between the tools that you want to use and the places where the data sits, then partner with an organization that manages that for you.
Absolutely. Catalina, would love your insight on this question.
I partially agree with Jared, and I'm going to add my 2 cents there. I think the release of the ChatGPTs of the world 2 years ago is shifting a bit on the demand for organic upskilling as being part of the workforce. What that means is that, yes, if you are good at what you do, keep doing what you do and be the best at what you do. But there is also a new shift in the community where these users are already empowered by these technologies outside the enterprise. So they are questioning a GPT bot that provides access, instant access to all of this data with phenomenal responses and so on. And that is being demanded within the enterprise, and it's happening today. And that's the demand that I see for AI agents and for the application of LLMs and generative AI as part of these data outcomes. So what I will say that needs to happen to increase the time to value, how do you accelerate that, is number one, know that you are not going to deliver something that is going to deliver value working as a silo. that's not going to happen. You can be a master in AI, but if you are not working with the SME and with whoever has the domain expertise from that business use case, you are not going to accelerate value. So you have to foster a culture of collaboration between the data scientists, but between the business owners, and IT has to support that. And today we'll need to adjust to the new technology that is available out there that is actually closing the gap between what you can do or don't do, or how much limited you are based on the skills that you bring to the table. And it's more like, oh, you are a new empowered user that is requesting having access to interrogate your data the same way that you do it outside enterprise. So I add a slightly variation to that answer. And I think that there are a lot of teams that actually can leverage a lot of these pre-built solutions that are out there. But I will say, stay away from the black boxes, because if you really want to accelerate value there, it's your experts, your SMEs, your domain expertise that is really going to be empowered and augmented by this technology. Those are my 2 cents there.
That's a great point. I was waiting for somebody to bring up Gen AI because it's a huge topic, and it's brought up every webinar. If it's not me, it's somebody else. Jeff, anything to add here?
Well, so this is a funny one because, I used to build ROI models for my previous analytic companies I work for. And most often when you're building, like, what's the return on this whole system that you're working on and trying to implement, it's usually in some degree of time savings, or, as Katarina was just saying, some kind of time to value savings. But the time savings manifests itself in a number of different ways, right? You could be more informed, in order to make an important business decision sooner, right? That's a good thing. You're looking at performance metrics, and hey, I just saved myself a year's worth of investment because I could see that this is, this investment isn't going to pay off very, very quickly based on performance metrics. That would be, a highly, highly valuable kind of ROI recognition that, you don't get if you're operating blindly. And so the other ROI is always, how much more well-informed the entire, as these guys are talking about, the entire organization is, right? And that democratization of data that they can all have access to and use, that's pretty valuable there too. And then the irony of all of this is that it could just take one epiphany to make a huge difference and, change the nature of your, of your business. And maybe getting to that one epiphany, if you are starting to use Gen AI to help, to help work out the kind of analytic problems you're looking at, and to help you become smarter about where to look and what to look at in conversation with a Gen AI, you might get to that valuable epiphany sooner and be able to, act on it as more and more quickly. And then, of course, we look ahead, and we're going to start to take a lot of the human beings out of the equation. Right, because that's the other irony about analytics is it usually requires people with eyeballs to be looking at and processing the information they're seeing. That's where analytics really has its value and happens. But as agentic applications start to take place, agents start to work and rationalize things themselves, that might end up taking the human out of the process and accelerate the process moving forward. So you'd see big benefits there as well.
That's a great point, Jeff. I wonder if one day, in fact, I think one day at some point in the future, you're going to be talking to me, but it is going to be a robot, just so you know.
Yes.
It might be already,
it's already out there.
Yeah, but think of the name, likeness, and name, image, and likeness royalties you can get off of that, Steve.
Exactly. Nope. I'm already talking to a lawyer, believe me. Okay, so why don't we move on to our next question? And Catalina, I'm going to let you go first on this one. In your discussions with users, how big of an issue is cloud optimization and cost management? We know energy costs are obviously going up. We hear things about this. Is this a big area right now? Are folks just getting whiny? What is your take on this?
Yeah, it's very common to hear. It's a significant concern. But I will say that it's come from all that investment that we are doing in terms of how are we going to maximize the use of this infrastructure, because at the end you're investing, cloud costs, AI tokens, consultants, upskilling your people, right? So all of that is expense. How are we going to start showing that we are moving the needle? This is actually creating some efficiencies. We have micro automation jobs that are actually saving us X amount of time and so on. So I believe that the main concern comes from managing those cloud resources to, first of all, avoid the unnecessary costs. How do you know that are unnecessary? And you need to target the performance, right? So you want to balance, reduce unnecessary cost, ensure performance, but at the same time, keep the security and the compliance on top. And at the end, I see that the first thing to solve a problem is to know the problem. So for us, the number one resource there is being able to have that transparency in cloud costs and usage. And that covers from descriptive to predictive to Gen AI. So for example, a lot of demand for, again, generative AI and all of these AI agents, and not one LLM is a silver bullet for all the use cases out there in the enterprise. So I do see a demand for this oversee of this transparency in what's going on with my cloud ecosystem in regards with my AI agents, so I know which business units is using which LLM, how many tokens is this costing me, how much is this costing me for the different business units, and so on. You need to have visibility so you can actually make educated decisions while maintaining all those variables in place.
Understood. Jared, what are you seeing?
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, a lot of our customers are really just looking to get the right data in the right place at the right time. And so the trends that we're seeing when it comes to optimization and cloud management is, optimizing your spend when it comes to storage and compute. And the way that, we help customers solve that problem, and the way that, we see this problem being solved well is balancing, replication. So warehousing, large, big data stores with live data access. So there are some situations where, certain business units, they don't need the data in the warehouse. The data can stay in the native application. The data can stay in Salesforce or Workday. The data can stay in ServiceNow or Jira. And you can perform analytics on it using a variety of tools, which CData helps with. But then there are other situations where you do need that holistic view. And so for us, we see people trying to strategize around optimizing those costs. What data do I leave in place? What data do I migrate so that, I don't have to pay the compute cost with Salesforce, even though I'm paying for storage, but, I am going to have to spend a certain amount when it comes to, building my warehouse and storing the data there, and then treating it as an analytical warehouse and paying the compute costs that's required for, complex processes there. So, yeah.
Understood. Jeff, anything you'd like to add on this one?
Well, one of the funny things, of course, the whole goal of adopting cloud is you get to, it's a pay-per-use or your pay-per-activity kind of business model. So you look at analytics, and arguably that's like an 8 to 10 hour per day kind of activity. It's usually when employees are online. And so you're paying just for that activity. That's great. But as Jared just said, there's all of the other background activities that sometimes go on overnight. Sometimes you're retaining information longer than you might want to be or not. Or sometimes your analytics just becomes so darn popular and successful that every employee starts spinning up their own little data mart or data warehouse. And then, of course, they don't shut them down. Right, that's a prevailing issue with some of the data warehousing vendors is they they're making it, generating enormous wealth just by having a data mart run idly in the cloud on behalf of a user that only needed it 2 weeks ago, and then stop caring about it and using it. So there are still excesses that you'll find in cloud operations, and certainly I see with my customers that what they hate to receive is their cloud consumption bill. And that's what they're examining with regard to what kind of resourcing is all of this stuff taking, because generally everybody wants to be like, well, if they're online using it and looking at it, I'll pay for that. But if it's idle or if it's over provisioned and whatnot, I don't want to pay for it. But the idleness ends up being a real factor. And the more and more applications and the more and more activities that do move to the cloud, it just shifts the your command and control and cost management activities to looking at areas where you can constantly save. Right, we're doing we're constantly monitoring our own businesses that sort of way. Are we getting value out of whatever application we're running or not? And if not, let's turn it down and look for other areas where we could either repurpose that spend or save it. And of course, the economy is not doing anybody any good, kind of right now, in that there is a much larger focus on business profitability and operational transparency and making sure that you are gaining the most value for the amount of money that you're getting out, that you're putting into any system, whether it's cloud and whatnot. There's just seems to be that shift over the last, I don't know, year and a half coming out, post pandemic. But now let's really examine how everything's working again. So it's all of those kind of considerations. So yeah, cost is always going to be something to be aware of.
We do see operational efficiency as like the number one priority when we ask database trends and application subscribers, why are they, what are the big drivers behind improving their data management efforts? That's numero uno, even above AI development. If you can get to one place, hopefully you can get to another place in terms of AI readiness. But yeah, I think that's a fantastic point. And, some of these things are so easy to buy too. It's like using Apple Pay, it almost doesn't feel like you're buying them, of course, until you get the bill. And then that's a different story.
And $7.99 a month across, a whole bunch of applications, across a whole bunch of people adds up pretty well.
Absolutely. So, Jared, I'm going to let you take this next question. We haven't really dived into this yet, and it's important. So the question is, data governance, compliance, and security continue to be top of mind for organizations today, especially as AI adoption grows and the implications thereof. What are, as both new and existing workloads continue to move to the cloud, what are practices all organizations should be doing to ensure their bases are covered?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I think the shortest answer that I can give is don't move data that you don't have to. I think, in recent history, especially when data warehouses were like all the rage, they said, well, just move it all. Just put it all in the warehouse. Just put everything in the warehouse. It can sit there. We can do our analytics. And largely that worked because the warehouse was on premises. It was, within the four walls of a business. But as it moves to the cloud, all of the cloud providers, tout great security. They tout great uptime and availability, but none of them is perfect. The easiest data to protect is the data that no one can touch. I'll just reiterate, if you have customer data, if you have personnel data, if you have patient data, if you're in, health services, and you don't need to move that data to fuel your AI initiatives. You don't need to know someone's name or social security number, credit card number in order to build an LLM. You want maybe demographic or firmographic information about, your customers or your patients or your students or whatever the case is. So move that data, do your analytics and build your LLMs on that data. Let your AI bots hit that data, but just leave the rest of it alone.
It's a great point, Jared. We kind of went from the data warehouse rager to the data lake rager. I think there's probably been a cloud rager. Maybe we're still into it. Maybe folks have a little bit of a hangover now or something in between. But Jeff, what are your thoughts on best practices that all organizations should really be adhering to right now?
Well, so yeah, it is a really interesting question in this era of AI, right? Where the risk is, in many cases, talk to tons of customers, that the risk is so high for any of their proprietary or sensitive and whatnot data getting out into a model, that what you're going to see as best practices, kind of happen. And Katerina was alluding to this too, is model, the landscape of language models is going to change dramatically. Right now, we've got maybe 20 models that are really out there, and maybe 4 that are really popular and getting used. Well, we are going to see an explosion of specialization, where there will be medical models, and there will be physics models, and there will be geographic models, and there will be industry-based models, and the like, and they're all going to be designed so that they don't require a god-awful amount of computing resource to train, retrain, and keep relevant, right? So that's one of the drivers for specialization, is just raw training costs. But that specialization is also going to help for privatization of models, and for the model providers or the database providers or the cloud providers. Arguably everyone is going to come up with the idea of, hey, if I host a model and I host it on behalf of the customer and I keep it in my private environment, that's a little bit safer than asking questions to raw ChatGPT, right? So the models will privatize, models will specialize, they will become smaller. You're going to end up also realizing that consumption of models does take a lot of resource and still takes a lot of time, and we still kind of know this, but we've seen this pattern hundreds of times in our lifetime. Like, even when no one tolerates a slow loading web page right now, but you somewhat tolerate a slow loading or slow responding LLM conversation. That's going to go away, right? You're not going to tolerate a 15-second delay where the LLM thinks about it and tells you it's thinking about its answer. That's just a gimmick, right? Because the thing is slow. So you're going to end up needing to accelerate that conversation and response. Small models will help do that, but also the other thing that's going to help do that is putting the data close to the model, and then after you've done that, put the consumption of the data and the model close to the consumer, or the individual who's actually posing the conversation, or the agents that are posing the conversation. All of that's going to end up reducing latency, which is going to end up making this far more popular and making it much more interesting in terms of what people are going to be able to do. Now, here's the irony of all of that. What we're also seeing is that AI has great potential, but in many cases, no one knows how to move beyond building a chatbot or using a coding assistant, because those or generating emails, bespoke emails for yourself. They don't know what they're going to do next with with Gen AI. So we've made up, and actually in one of my slides I was showing a little graphic running that was just demonstrating visual search for you. And all it was doing is I trained a model on a bunch of produce, right? Pictures of produce. And then I would show it the picture, it would recognize through a tablet, it would recognize it, and then it would do something about it. And that's just a visual similarity search, which was quite easy to implement, but really powerful in what it's going to end up ultimately being able to do. So, and it's just like visualize it, recognize it, and then do something about it. But that paradigm, and the demo that was running was recognize a piece of fruit and put it in the shopping cart, right? That was the action. But you could say, take a picture of yourself, and then the action would be generate your boarding pass, or pass through TSA without having to do anything other than just show your face. Accelerating those kind of timings. Check yourself into the hotel as you walk through the transom of the Marriott. These easy kind of use cases that just simple visual recognition can really push a lot. And then the rest of the use cases move on from there. And so, the best practice really, as you look at any of this, whether it's you're doing numeric calculations or you're trying to build some other clever, analytic or cleanse your data or whatever with coding assistance, ultimately it's try something and see where it goes, but be careful about it, right? It's, the origin of this conversation was, don't share stuff you shouldn't, or as Jared was saying, don't provide access to stuff you shouldn't. Certainly all are really, really true. And in the meantime, there's plenty of other material out there that you can spin yourself up on, or you can, train your own local model to operate on.
That's a great point, Jeff. And I agree that, we will probably see the proliferation of more specialized models in the future. And who knows, in a year or two or more, we could come back and one of the questions could be around model cost management. And, we have too many models. How do we, I think we're probably at the beginning of
I was talking to a customer on Monday. They're making smart operating rooms, right? It's going to be really incredible, right? The kinds of things
it's really interesting
are going to spin out of this.
Yeah, the future will be very interesting. Catalina, I haven't gotten to you in a while. Would love your input on this, and then I'm going to let you go first on our final question for today. We're almost at the top.
Yeah. And I'm going to recap part of the question, because what are practices that organizations should be doing to ensure they have their bases covered? And I partially agree with Gerard again. Don't move the data if you don't need to. And I agree with Jeff in a lot of the things. Keep the data closer to the model and all of that. But I think the most important thing is to actually have a governance strategy. And what that means is that you have to be thinking about, again, holistically, what is that framework look like, and how you're going to ensure that you are providing the data to the right people. And yes, we will have to be in compliance with regulatory standards, and we have to follow GDPR and CCPA and everything else that is coming. But at the same time, let's think about these new LLMs and these new agents and these new micro automation jobs that are starting to be deployed in the field, and how we keep democratizing that, but in a way that we can continuously monitor the precision, the accuracy, the transparency, the bias, that everything else that we have to keep in mind where we are deploying anything that is a data outcome. So I think the strategy is to actually have a governance framework and think holistically who needs to be part of it, who is going to be the stakeholder that is actually signing into retraining a model or redeploying a model, or who is the stakeholder that is ensuring that we are still within the precision that we should be based on those guardrails and policies of the enterprise.
That's a fantastic point, Catalina, because these models also, they're very easy to use, whether it's something simple like ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, etc. But in an enterprise setting, you have to think very carefully. Even in a kind of low stakes setting, you're worried about, all right, well, how accurate, how reliable is this? But then you start bringing, sensitive data into play. You do have to worry about governance. You have to worry about privacy, security, compliance. Should we be doing data masking, it's encryption, etc. So that's a great point. Those two things really do need to be balanced. So we are almost at the top of the hour. We're going to do one more question and go around the table here. Catalina, I'm going to let you lead off with this one, and it's sort of a grab-all question. If there's one thing that you'd really like our attendees today to walk away keeping in mind, what would that be? And if there's anything you're really excited about in terms of current trends that you think will continue to grow next year, feel free to weigh in on that as well.
The one thing is the time is now. I think as humans, we are living a very, very interesting chapter. I believe that technology is actually closing the gap between what very skilled developer programmers personas can do versus the business users can do. I think it's opening the door for different personas within the enterprise to be able to equally be empowered by technology and ask questions to that data to perform and deliver at standards in terms of their own OKRs. I believe that trend for 2025 is the moving ahead. Like 10 years ago, we were talking about democratizing data and data lakes and yada, yada, yada. Today, we are talking about democratizing AI. I think we are living in the everyday AI chapter. And what that means is that we are using AI even without thinking about that we are using AI. So how we are going to be empowered by this, but how we are going to be the humans empowered by it. How are we going to keep that human in the loop when we are deploying any of this into production? How are we going to ensure that we have a framework that is going to follow that ethical AI, responsible AI guardrail standards that we have within our own enterprise, but making AI more accessible and trustworthy and integrated into the everyday AI business operations.
That's a fantastic point, and I absolutely agree. You got to get that balance in place. And I think nowadays, you use things that rely on AI more than I think a lot of people realize.
Exactly,
it's all, there's
it's
a lot
happening.
of things where
it is out there.
Yep, absolutely. Jared, I'm going to go to you next. Your final words, remarks, anything you'd like our audience to keep in mind, anything that has you excited right now.
Yeah. So, I think the thing that I see, that I have seen, in my time in technology is that more and more every day there is a best fit tool for your organization, for your process, for your business goals, and so don't be afraid to partner with other organizations to make those changes. As you're looking at cloud adoption, you have a ton of choices when it comes to where you're going to store your data, where you're going to spend your money on compute, and so take the time when you're developing your strategy to figure out which one fits you best. And I can say that because companies like ours exist where you don't have to worry about getting access to that data, being able to move that data. So if you really love the CRM functions of your favorite CRM, keep it. And that just fuels, the kinds of things that Catalina was talking about, where you're going to be able to democratize that AI. So we've democratized data access. We're going to democratize AI. And I look forward to the kinds of things that Jeff was talking about. The things that excite me the most is moving beyond asking my phone a question, and that being my sole experience with AI. But what does the future look like? Can AI effectively debug an extremely niche program? Can AI effectively help IT teams troubleshoot networking issues, and it not be a stock answer, but be able to understand the subtleties that occur if you're working with one system or another. So yeah, mostly looking forward to seeing AI help solve like real world problems beyond how do I write a Python script to pull data out of Couchbase.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. And I think it's going to be interesting. There will be plenty more for us to talk about. Jeff, I saved I saved you for last, back cleanup here. So anything you'd like to add? What's top of mind for you, and what would you really like our attendees today to walk away keeping in mind?
I'm enjoying all of the baseball references, and my lineup, my order in the lineup is I like where it's going. Anyway, so the things to remember or to keep in mind about all of this is, and bring it back to the original notion of, should I move my analytics into the cloud? Absolutely, right? There's really, it's already been proven to be significantly beneficial, so just do it. And then start to think about what you can be working on next that would be beneficial out of that data, or be beneficial somewhere somewhere in your organization. And if we start talking, and continuing this, AI is the future and it's really going to happen, is don't be afraid of that either, right? It's it's not that difficult to use, especially because it is conversational, right? And it does give you answers, even if they're silly in some cases, and it does get better. So if there's sort of advice that I think all of us could offer up, it's keep going. and go learn this stuff, because it will be valuable for you personally, and it will be valuable for you professionally. And we are in right at the cusp of an era that is as transitional, I think, as the internet was, back in the late 90s. It's really, really that big a deal. And the quicker that you become comfortable with it, regardless of how old or how technologically savvy you are, do it, because, like I said, it's going to be beneficial for you individually, and it's going to be beneficial for everybody else and anything else that you're doing. And it's kind of cool, right? So enjoy it too. So Stephen, that's kind of my thought on it is, don't stand still.
I think that's great advice. And, we can just think back in time, to the early to mid 90s when the internet came into, being, and just how much things have changed. And I think you're probably right that we are at the beginning of a longer cycle with AI. First, I'd like to thank our attendees. We went beyond the bell today. The speakers were good enough to stay with us, and you were as well, and we certainly appreciate that. I'd also like to give a huge thank you to our speakers for coming on with us today and sharing their insights and expertise. Once again, Jeff Morris, Vice President of Product and Solutions Marketing at Couchbase, Catalina Herrera, Field CDO at Dataiku, and Jared Johnson, Senior Technology Evangelist at CData Software. So if you would like to review this presentation or send it to a colleague, you can use the same exact URL that you used for today's live event. This will be archived. It'll likely be up on the DBTA website by tomorrow afternoon. And if you would like a PDF of the deck, you can go to the handouts section once the archive is live. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today, and we hope to see you again soon.